My wife had an affair with her boss, so I moved into his house and met the woman who changed everything. The night I realized my wife was sleeping with her boss, I didn't smash her phone. I didn't scream. I didn't even confront her. Instead, 3 days later, I rang the doorbell of his mansion. And when the door opened, it wasn't him standing there. It was his wife. She looked at me for 5 seconds before speaking. Then she said something that changed everything. "Let me guess," she said calmly. "You're here because of Rachel." My blood went cold. "How do you know my wife's name?" The woman smiled. Not kindly, not cruelly, just knowingly. "Because," she said quietly, "you're not the first husband to show up here." The message appeared on my wife's phone at 11:48 p.m. And it wasn't meant for me. I wasn't snooping. I was just trying to plug her phone into the charger because she had fallen asleep on the couch again. Rachel had been working insane hours lately. Late meetings, corporate dinners, weekend retreats. Ever since she started working for Daniel Hartman, her life had become a whirlwind of expensive restaurants and private flights. And I had tried to be supportive, I really had. But that night, everything changed. Her phone lit up in my hand just as I reached for the charging cable. A message banner slid across the screen, and I saw it, just one line. "Last night was worth every risk." Below it was a name, Daniel H. My stomach tightened. For a long moment I just stared at the glowing screen. Then another message appeared. "I can't stop thinking about you." I felt the room tilt slightly. Rachel shifted in her sleep beside me, mumbling something softly before rolling over. I slowly placed the phone back on the coffee table. My heart was pounding, but strangely, I didn't feel angry. Not yet. I felt something else. Cold curiosity. The kind I usually felt when debugging a broken security system. Something was wrong, and I needed to understand the pattern. The next morning, Rachel acted completely normal. Too normal. She walked into the kitchen wearing one of my old college shirts, hair still messy from sleep. "Morning," she said, pouring coffee. I watched her carefully. "Morning." She leaned against the counter and smiled. "You look tired." I didn't sleep much. She sipped her coffee. "Work stress?" Something like that. I hesitated for a moment before speaking. "Rachel, your boss texted you last night." Her hand paused slightly. Then she looked up. "Oh?" Her voice was casual. Too casual. "What did he say?" I studied her face. "He said last night was worth every risk." Rachel stared at me. Then she laughed. Actually laughed. "Oh my God, Adrian." "What? You scared me for a second." "Why?" I thought something serious happened. My chest tightened. "You don't think that message is serious?" She rolled her eyes. "It's about a client deal." "At midnight?" "We closed a huge contract yesterday." "With risks?" "Yes," she said impatiently. "That's how business works." I leaned forward slightly. "Can I see the conversation?" Her eyes hardened instantly. "Excuse me?" "The full message thread." Rachel set her mug down. "You want to go through my phone now?" "I just want to understand." "What you want," she said sharply, "is to invade my privacy." "I'm asking a question, and I answered it." Silence filled the kitchen. Rachel grabbed her purse. "You know what your problem is?" "What?" "You're insecure." The word landed like a slap. "I'm not insecure." "Then stop acting like it." She walked toward the door. "I have a meeting with Daniel this morning." I watched her slip on her heels. Before leaving, she turned back. "You need to trust me, Adrian." Then she walked out. The door closed behind her. The house fell silent. I stood there for a long time, thinking, because one thing kept repeating in my mind. If that message was innocent, why did she look nervous when I asked to see her phone? And why did she leave the house smiling, like she had already won an argument that never really happened? I didn't know the answer yet, but 3 days later, I would see my wife kissing Daniel Hartman on a balcony overlooking Lake Michigan, and that was the moment I decided to walk into his house. Not to fight him, not to threaten him, but to meet the one person who understood exactly what he was doing, his wife. And when Sophia Hartman opened the door, she said something I will never forget. "You must be Adrian," she said calmly. I froze. "How do you know my name?" She stepped aside and let me in. Then she said quietly, "Because I've been waiting for you." Rachel's words should have reassured me. They did the opposite. For the next 2 days I said nothing about the message. I did not ask more questions. I did not touch her phone again. I behaved exactly the way she expected me to behave. Quiet, supportive, passive. Rachel seemed relieved by the sudden calm. She hummed while getting ready for work. She kissed my cheek in the mornings. She spoke about her boss the way ambitious employees speak about powerful men, with admiration. "Daniel thinks the company might expand to Europe next year," she said one evening while pouring herself a glass of wine. "If that happens, I could be traveling a lot more." "That sounds exciting," I replied. She smiled proudly. "It is." But the more she talked, the more I began noticing something strange. Rachel had always been expressive. She used to tell me every detail about her day, every coworker, every small frustration. Now her stories felt rehearsed, short, controlled, the kind of explanations people give when they do not want follow-up questions. That was when I started looking for patterns. I worked in cybersecurity. My entire career had been built on analyzing behavior that people tried to hide inside complex systems. Human lies were rarely different. They left patterns. On Thursday afternoon, I opened my laptop and began with something simple: Rachel's travel calendar. Our shared email account still synchronized flight confirmations automatically. Rachel had forgotten to turn that feature off months ago. At first, the information seemed ordinary. Boston, Austin, San Francisco, all the places Hartman Technologies frequently sent executives. But after 30 minutes of looking through the dates, I noticed something. Every one of Rachel's business trips occurred on the exact same days Daniel Hartman had public appearances in those cities. I opened a new window and searched for press coverage of Hartman Technologies events, conference photos, tech panels, investor summits. Each article listed dates and locations. I placed them into a spreadsheet. Then I compared them to Rachel's flight confirmations. The match was almost perfect. Boston, both there on March 12th. San Francisco, both there on April 2nd. Austin, both there 3 weeks ago. My stomach tightened. That could still be coincidence. Rachel worked for Daniel. Of course she would attend events with him. But something about the pattern bothered me. Rachel had never mentioned attending those conferences. Not once. That night she returned home around 9:30, looking elegant and slightly flushed from wine. Long day? I asked. You have no idea, she sighed, kicking off her heels. Another dinner with Daniel? She did not look at me when she answered. Yes, investor meeting. What restaurant? She paused briefly. The Harbor Room. I nodded. That place closed 2 months ago. Rachel froze. Only for a moment. Then she laughed. Did I say Harbor Room? I meant Harbor House. I smiled faintly. Right. She poured another glass of wine and changed the subject. I said nothing more. But the next morning I did something I had never done before. I drove downtown to the headquarters of Hartman Technologies. The building rose above the Chicago River like a wall of glass and steel. 30 floors of quiet power. Employees moved through the lobby with the focused energy of people building something expensive and important. I sat across the street inside a small coffee shop. My laptop remained closed on the table. I was not there to work. I was there to observe. For 3 hours, nothing unusual happened. Executives came and went. Assistants carried folders between departments. Security guards rotated shifts near the entrance. Around 6 in the evening, the building began to empty. Employees poured out into the fading light of the city, but Rachel did not appear. 7 o'clock passed, then 8. The coffee shop grew quieter as evening settled over the river. Finally, at 8:23, the glass doors opened again. Daniel Hartman stepped out. He looked exactly like the photographs that appeared in business magazines. Tall, confident, perfectly tailored suit. He spoke briefly with 2 men near the entrance before walking toward a waiting car. But he was not alone. Rachel walked beside him. They were laughing. Not the polite laughter co-workers share after a long day. This was different, relaxed, private. Daniel leaned closer and said something near her ear. Rachel touched his arm. The gesture lasted less than a second, but it was familiar. Too familiar. They reached the car together. The driver opened the rear door. Rachel climbed inside first. Daniel followed. The door closed. The car pulled away into Chicago traffic. I remained sitting at the table for several minutes. My hands rested quietly on the edge of the laptop. Something inside my chest felt hollow. The lie had not been dramatic. No secret hotel rooms. No hidden kisses. Just 2 people living work together in a way that felt entirely natural. That was the part that hurt the most. When I arrived home later that evening, Rachel was already there. She stood in the kitchen, scrolling through her phone. You are late, she said casually. So are you. I told you I had dinner with investors. I leaned against the counter. Interesting, she looked up. What does that mean? I saw you downtown. Her expression changed immediately. What? At Hartman Technologies. Silence filled the kitchen. You must have seen someone else, she said finally. No, I saw you get into Daniel's car. Rachel's eyes hardened. So what? So what? He gave me a ride after work, she said coolly. That is all. Where did you go? To dinner. With investors? Yes. I held her gaze. You told me the restaurant closed months ago. She exhaled slowly. You know what, Adrienne? What? I am tired. Tired of what? This interrogation. I am asking simple questions. You are accusing me. I am asking the truth. Rachel stepped closer. Her voice turned colder than I had ever heard it before. You want the truth? Yes. The truth is that I work for one of the most powerful men in the technology industry. I know that. And sometimes that means long hours. I understand. And sometimes, she continued sharply, that means being around successful people who live differently than you do. I frowned slightly. What does that mean? It means, she said, that my world is changing. The sentence hung in the air between us. And you do not like that. I studied her face. Are you sleeping with him? Rachel laughed, a short, sharp sound. You really believe that? I asked a question. She crossed her arms. No. Look at me and say it. I just did. You did not look at me. Her eyes met mine. I am not sleeping with Daniel. The words came out smoothly, perfectly, almost too perfectly. Then she added something that made the room feel colder. But honestly, what? If I wanted to, it would not be your business anymore. I blinked. What? You heard me. She walked past me toward the hallway. You have been insecure ever since I started this job. That is not true. It is exactly true. She stopped on the stairs and looked down at me. You know what your biggest problem is, Adrian? What? You think being quiet makes you strong. I said nothing. But the truth, she continued, is that you are just afraid of confrontation. She smiled faintly. And men like Daniel are not. Rachel disappeared upstairs. The bedroom door closed. I remained standing in the kitchen. Her words echoed through the house. Afraid of confrontation. Too quiet. Too passive. Rachel believed something very important. She believed I would never fight back. And because she believed that, she had stopped hiding the truth carefully. People who think they are untouchable always become careless. They assume no one is watching. They assume no one will act. That night, I sat alone in the dark living room for a long time, watching the lights of Chicago reflect across the river outside our windows. Somewhere across the city, Rachel's boss was probably enjoying another quiet evening in his mansion. A powerful man, untouchable. But 3 days later, I would stand on the doorstep of that mansion, and when the door opened, everything would change. Because the person waiting inside already knew exactly what her husband had been doing, and she had been waiting for someone like me to arrive. Someone who had finally seen the pattern. The shift inside me was not loud. There was no dramatic moment when anger exploded or furniture shattered against the walls. Instead, something quieter happened. The man who had been trying to save his marriage slowly disappeared. In his place remained someone who simply wanted the truth. Rachel did not notice the change immediately. For the next 2 days, I behaved exactly as she expected. I worked from home. I asked polite questions about her day. I listened while she talked about meetings and investors and the exciting future of Hartman Technologies. She seemed relaxed again, confident. On Friday evening, she stood in the bedroom mirror, adjusting a pair of silver earrings I had never seen before. You are dressed up, I said from the doorway. She glanced at me briefly. Company dinner? With Daniel? With clients. I nodded. What restaurant? The Shoreline Club. Her voice was smooth, prepared. You will be home late? Probably. She sprayed perfume lightly across her neck. The scent filled the room. For a moment I watched her silently. Then I said something that made her pause. You have been going to a lot of dinners with Daniel lately. Rachel turned slowly. Her expression sharpened. Do we really have to start this again? I am only asking. She sighed. Adrian, you need to stop obsessing over my job. I am not obsessing. Yes, you are. She grabbed her purse and walked toward the hallway. You need to trust me. The same sentence again. Trust me. The door closed behind her a minute later. The house fell silent. I waited 10 minutes, then I picked up my keys and followed her. Chicago traffic moved slowly along the lakefront as the sun did behind the skyline. Rachel's car stayed 2 lanes ahead of me the entire time. She was not going downtown. She was heading north, past Evanston, past the familiar neighborhoods. Eventually, the city lights began to fade behind us. Dark water stretched beside the highway. Lake Michigan looked endless under the night sky. After another 20 minutes, Rachel turned onto a quiet road lined with tall trees and expensive waterfront properties. Large iron gates appeared ahead. Rachel's car slowed. The gates opened automatically. She drove through. I pulled over on the opposite side of the road. The house beyond the gate was enormous, a modern structure of glass and stone overlooking the lake. Lights glowed warmly through the wide windows. Even from the road, I could tell the property extended far down to a private dock, Daniel Hartman's lake house. I sat in my car for several minutes. My heart was beating slowly now, calm, almost detached. Finally, I stepped out of the car. The night air was cool and carried the faint smell of water. I walked down a narrow path along the shoreline until I reached a stretch of rocks across the small inlet from the house. From there, the balcony was clearly visible. Soft music drifted faintly across the water. 2 figures stepped outside, Rachel and Daniel. For a moment, they simply stood together beneath the soft glow of the balcony lights. Daniel poured wine into 2 glasses. Rachel laughed at something he said. The sound traveled across the quiet lake like a knife through silence. I had heard that laugh many times before, but never like this. Never this soft. Never this private. Daniel stepped closer to her. Rachel did not move away. He said something I could not hear. She touched his chest. My hands slowly clenched at my sides. Then it happened. Daniel placed one hand lightly against the back of her neck. Rachel tilted her face upward, and they kissed. It was not quick. It was not uncertain. It was the kind of kiss two people shared when they had done it many times before. 6 years of marriage collapsed into that single moment. Every excuse, every denial, every lie, all of it disappeared beneath the simple truth unfolding 20 yards away. The kiss ended. Rachel rested her forehead briefly against Daniel's shoulder. They both laughed quietly, as if nothing in the world could possibly threaten them. Something inside my chest cracked then. Not rage, something heavier, something final. For several seconds, I stood completely still in the darkness. I expected anger to take over. I expected the sudden urge to march across the water, storm through the gate, and confront them both. But the anger never came. Instead, a strange calm settled over me, because in that moment I understood something important. Rachel believed I was too quiet to act. Daniel believed he was too powerful to be challenged. Both of them were wrong. On the balcony, Daniel poured more wine. Rachel leaned against the railing beside him. She looked relaxed, comfortable, like someone who had already left her old life behind. I watched them for another minute. Then I turned and walked back to my car. The drive home took nearly an hour. The city lights slowly reappeared along the horizon as Chicago grew closer. But my mind was not on the road. It was on the house I had just left behind. Daniel Hartman's lake house. The place where my marriage had just ended. By the time I parked outside our apartment building, the plan had already begun forming in my mind. Not revenge. Revenge was emotional. Revenge was reckless. What I wanted was something far more precise. I wanted answers. And there was only one person who could give them to me. Daniel Hartman himself. Rachel arrived home a little after midnight. I was sitting in the living room with the lights off. She jumped slightly when she saw me. "Oh," she said, "you are still awake." I could not sleep. She kicked off her heels and set her purse on the table. "How was your night?" "Busy." "Good dinner?" "Yes." "With clients?" "Yes." The lie came effortlessly. I studied her face. Her hair was slightly windblown from the lake. Her lipstick had faded. There was a softness in her expression I had not seen in months, a softness meant for someone else. "I'm going to shower," she said. She walked upstairs without another word. Water began running through the pipes a minute later. I sat there quietly, listening, thinking. The truth had finally become simple. Rachel was not confused. She was not making a mistake. She had made a choice. And Daniel Hartman believed that choice belonged entirely to him. But there was something he did not know. He did not know that I had seen everything. And more importantly, he did not know that I was coming to see him. Not at his office, not at a public event, but at the one place where powerful men felt safest. His own home, the lake house. 3 days from now I would stand at the front door of that mansion. And when it opened, the person waiting inside would not be Daniel. It would be someone else entirely. Someone who had been watching the same pattern of lies. Someone who understood exactly what kind of man Daniel Hartman truly was. His wife, Sophia Hartman. And when she looked at me for the first time, she would say something that made the entire situation far more dangerous than I had ever imagined. "You must be Adrian," she would say calmly. "Come inside." Then she would close the door behind us and explain that my wife was only one of many. 3 days passed before I returned to the lake house. During those 3 days, Rachel behaved as if nothing had changed. She moved through our home with the relaxed confidence of someone who believed the danger had already passed. She left for work early each morning, sometimes humming quietly while making coffee, sometimes scrolling through messages on her phone with a faint smile she tried to hide. Once she caught me watching her. "What?" she asked lightly. "Nothing. You have been quiet lately." "I have been working." She studied my face for a moment, as if trying to decide whether there was something beneath the calm surface. Then she shrugged. "Well, that is better than interrogating me again." Rachel believed the situation had settled. She believed I had given up. People often misunderstand silence. They think it means weakness. They think it means surrender. In reality, silence often means someone has begun thinking very carefully. On the 4th evening, I left the apartment just after sunset. Chicago traffic was heavy, the highways glowing with long rivers of red brake lights stretching toward the horizon. The city slowly faded behind me as I drove north along the lake. I did not rush. There was no anger pushing me forward anymore, only a quiet certainty. By the time I turned onto the same narrow road lined with expensive lakefront properties, the sky had turned dark blue and the first stars had begun to appear above the water. The iron gates stood exactly where I remembered them, tall, black, silent. I parked along the shoulder of the road again and stepped out of the car. The wind coming off Lake Michigan carried a faint chill. Waves moved slowly against the rocky shoreline below the property. The house was lit again. Warm golden light glowed through the white glass windows. But this time there was something different. Daniel's car was not in the driveway. I walked toward the gate. A small camera mounted above the intercom turned slightly, focusing on me. For a moment I considered turning back. This was the moment when most people would decide the situation had gone too far. Walking onto the property of a billionaire technology executive was not exactly a reasonable decision. But the moment passed. I pressed the intercom button. Silence followed. Then a soft mechanical click sounded. The gate opened, slowly. I stepped through. The gravel driveway curved gently through a small grove of trees before opening into a wide space in front of the house. The building looked even larger up close, its glass walls reflecting the dark surface of the lake behind it. No voices, no music, only the quiet sound of wind moving through the trees. I walked to the front door and knocked. For several seconds, nothing happened. Then the door opened. The woman standing there was not Rachel, and she was not surprised to see me. She appeared to be in her early 40s, tall, composed, dressed in a dark silk blouse and black trousers. Her posture carried the calm confidence of someone used to moving through expensive rooms without asking permission. Her eyes studied my face carefully. Then she spoke. "You must be Adrian." My heart stopped for a moment. "How do you know my name?" She opened the door wider. "Come inside." Her voice was calm, not curious, not alarmed, simply certain. I hesitated. "Is Daniel here?" "No." She stepped aside slightly. "He will not be returning tonight." Something in her tone made it clear that was not a guess. I walked inside. The house smelled faintly of wood and expensive candles. The interior was elegant but strangely quiet, like a place designed more for appearances than for living. The woman closed the door behind me. Then she extended her hand. "My name is Sophia Hartman." The name landed heavily in my chest. Daniel's wife. I shook her hand automatically. For a moment neither of us spoke. Sophia walked toward the large living room overlooking the lake and gestured toward the chair. "Please, sit." I remained standing. "I think you know why I am here." She nodded. "Yes." "How?" Sophia poured 2 glasses of wine from a bottle resting on a nearby table. "Because," she said calmly, "you are not the first husband to come looking for my husband." The sentence echoed quietly through the room. I stared at her. "What?" She handed me one of the glasses. Our fingers did not touch. "Sit down," she repeated gently. This time I did. Sophia took the chair across from me. For a moment she simply studied my face. Then she said something that made my stomach tighten. "Your wife's name is Rachel Cole." It was not a question. "Yes." Sophia nodded slowly. "I thought so." "How do you know her name?" She took a small sip of wine before answering. "Because Daniel has been seeing her for 3 months." The calmness in her voice was almost disturbing. "You knew?" I asked quietly. "Yes." "And you did nothing?" Sophia's lips curved slightly. "That depends on how you define nothing." She stood and walked to a desk near the window. When she returned, she carried a thin leather folder. She placed it on the table between us. "What is that?" I asked. "Evidence." She opened the folder. Inside were printed photographs, hotel entrances, restaurants, private car services, Rachel and Daniel appearing together again and again in different places, different cities, different nights. My chest tightened as I recognized Rachel's face in several of the pictures. "She told me those trips were business conferences," I said quietly. "They were." Sophia closed the folder again, just not the kind your wife described. Silence filled the room. Outside, the lake moved slowly beneath a dark sky. "How long have you known?" I asked. 6 months. 6? "Yes." I stared at her. "Why did you not confront him?" "I did." "And?" Sophia smiled faintly. He laughed. The simplicity of the answer made my chest tighten again. He said I was being paranoid. He said I was imagining things. "That sounds familiar," I said quietly. Sophia studied me carefully. "Rachel denied it too?" "Yes, of course she did." She leaned back slightly in her chair. "Daniel has always preferred women who believe they are smarter than the men around them." Her tone carried neither bitterness nor anger, only tired clarity. "I am sorry," she added after a moment. "For what?" "For what you saw." I realized she already knew about the balcony. "How?" "Because," she said quietly, "Daniel uses this house for most of his affairs." The room felt colder. Sophia looked toward the dark water outside the window. "Your wife is not the first woman he has brought here." The sentence hung in the air. "How many?" I asked. She shook her head slightly. I stopped counting. For several seconds neither of us spoke. Then Sophia looked back at me. "That is why I have been gathering evidence." "For divorce?" "Partly." "What is the other part?" Her eyes sharpened slightly. "Daniel Hartman has spent years building a public image based on trust and leadership." I nodded slowly. "But privately," she continued, "he has been using his company, his power, and his money to manipulate people." "What do you mean?" Sophia tapped the folder lightly. "Some of the trips your wife took were paid for by the company." I felt a chill move through my chest. "You mean he used corporate funds?" Yes, for his affairs. The implications settled between us. Sophia leaned forward slightly. Tell me something honestly, Adrian. What? What did you plan to do when you came here tonight? I thought about the moment on the balcony, about Rachel's laughter, about the quiet collapse of 6 years of marriage. I was going to confront him. Sophia nodded slowly. That would have been very satisfying. But Daniel Hartman would have denied everything. She gestured toward the folder again, and without evidence, he would have convinced everyone you were just another jealous husband. I sat back in the chair. Sophia's voice softened slightly. But now something has changed. What? She looked directly at me. Now there are two of us. The weight of that sentence settled slowly in the room. Two people betrayed by the same lies. Two people sitting in the quiet living room of a mansion built on secrets. Sophia closed the folder. Your wife believes you are too quiet to act, she said calmly. Yes. And Daniel believes his power protects him. I nodded. Sophia's eyes held mine. Both of them are wrong. Outside, waves struck the shoreline with slow, steady rhythm. For the first time since the night at the balcony, I felt something other than grief. Possibility. Sophia reached for the folder again. If you're willing, she said quietly, we can make sure the truth finally comes out. I looked at the photographs inside the folder. Rachel's smiling face. Daniel's hand resting casually against her back. 3 months of lies preserved on paper. Then I looked back at Sophia. What do you have in mind? Her answer was calm. An alliance. The night I left the lake house, the city looked different. Not brighter, not darker, just clearer. For weeks I had been wandering through confusion, trying to understand the marriage that had already collapsed behind my back. Now the confusion was gone. In its place was something colder and far more useful. Information. Sophia had not exaggerated. Daniel Hartman had built a life that depended on secrecy, and secrecy always leaves trails. The first few days after our meeting were quiet. Sophia and I spoke mostly through encrypted messages and brief phone calls late at night. She was careful, methodical, and far more strategic than I had expected. One evening she called while I was sitting alone in my car outside the grocery store parking lot. Did Rachel say anything unusual today? She asked. No, I said. She barely spoke to me. That will change soon. Why? Because Daniel is preparing something. What? Sophia was silent for a moment. I am not sure yet, but I have seen the signs before. Over the next week we began comparing everything we knew. Rachel's travel records, Daniel's flight logs, company expense reports Sophia had quietly copied over the past 6 months. The pattern became obvious quickly. Daniel never used the same hotels twice in a row. He rotated cities carefully. Chicago, New York, Miami, San Francisco, always tied to company meetings or investor presentations. But beneath the official schedule was another layer. Private dinners, luxury resorts, penthouse suites charged discreetly to subsidiary accounts inside Hartman Technologies. Sophia explained it with the calm patience of someone who had already accepted the ugliness of the truth. Daniel believes that power protects him, she said one night while we sat again in the quiet living room of the lake house. Documents covered the large table between us. He has spent years convincing everyone around him that he is brilliant, she continued. Is he not? Oh, he is very intelligent, but intelligence and arrogance often grow together. She slid a document across the table toward me. Look at this. It was an expense summary from one of the company's smaller divisions. Most of it looked normal, until I noticed the line items near the bottom. Private charter flights, luxury accommodations, consulting entertainment. The numbers were staggering. He used company money for this? I asked. Yes. For how long? At least 3 years. I leaned back slowly. And no one noticed? Sophia gave a faint smile. Oh, people noticed. But Daniel controls the board. The wind moved softly across the lake outside the window. For a moment I simply stared at the documents in front of me. This was no longer just about my marriage. This was something much larger. Sophia watched me quietly. You are wondering why I did not expose him earlier? Yes. Because without enough evidence, it would only look like a bitter divorce. She tapped the growing stack of papers on the table. But now we have more than enough. Meanwhile, life inside my apartment had begun changing. Rachel no longer pretended to be patient with me. Her politeness had disappeared completely. One evening she came home late and tossed her coat onto a chair without even looking at me. You are still here? She asked casually. Where else would I be? She walked into the kitchen and poured herself a glass of wine. You could start looking for another place. The sentence landed casually, like a suggestion about the weather. Why would I do that? Rachel leaned against the counter and studied me with open irritation. Because this marriage is over, Adrian. You sound very certain. I am. And Daniel agrees? Her eyes narrowed slightly. You should not talk about things you do not understand. I understand more than you think. Rachel laughed softly. The sound held no warmth at all. You have always been like this, she said. Quiet, passive, always pretending everything will work out if you just wait long enough. She took a sip of wine. But the real world does not work that way. Is that what Daniel told you? He did not need to. She set the glass down and stepped closer. Look at our lives honestly for once. You work quietly from home, writing code for companies that barely know your name. And you work for one of the most powerful technology executives in the country. Yes. Her eyes sparkled with a kind of ambition I had never seen before. Do you know what kind of future that opens? I said nothing. Rachel shook her head slowly. You have always been comfortable with small things, small success, small ambitions. Her voice dropped lower. I am not. The cruelty in her tone was not accidental anymore. It was deliberate, calculated. I deserve more than this life, she said quietly. And Daniel can give it to you? Yes. The certainty in her answer was almost impressive. She turned and walked toward the bedroom. Oh, and Adrian, she added casually before disappearing down the hallway, you might want to speak with the lawyer soon. The bedroom door closed. I sat alone in the living room for a long time. Strangely, her words did not hurt anymore. They simply confirmed what Sophia and I were already discovering. Rachel truly believed she was moving into a better world, a richer world, a more powerful world. She had no idea that the foundation of that world was already beginning to crack. 2 nights later, I met Sophia again at the lake house. This time the table held even more documents. Emails, travel bookings, financial transfers between obscure company accounts. Sophia had also obtained something else, video footage. She placed a small laptop in front of me and pressed play. The security camera angle showed the balcony where I had watched Rachel and Daniel kiss. But the date in the corner was nearly 2 months earlier, and the woman standing beside Daniel was not Rachel. I watched silently as Daniel wrapped his arm around a different woman, another employee from Hartman Technologies. They kissed exactly the same way. Sophia closed the laptop after a few seconds. As I said, she murmured, Rachel is not the first. My chest felt heavy again. Does Rachel know about the others? Sophia shook her head. Daniel tells each woman the same story. What story? That his marriage is already over. I exhaled slowly. And they believe him. Most of them do. Sophia looked directly at me. But Rachel believes something even more dangerous. What? That she is special. Silence filled the room again. The truth was becoming painfully clear. Rachel believed she was stepping into Daniel Hartman's world. But Daniel had been inviting women into that world for years. Temporary guests. Disposable. Sophia stood and walked toward a large window overlooking the dark lake. You know what fascinates me most about men like Daniel? She asked quietly. What? They think betrayal is a private act. She turned to face me again. But betrayal always spreads. I nodded slowly. What happens next? Sophia returned to the table and closed the folder containing all the evidence. What happens next, she said calmly, is that Daniel Hartman's world begins to collapse. Outside the lake moved slowly beneath the moonlight. Far away in the city, Rachel was probably imagining a future filled with luxury and influence. A future where she would leave me behind without consequences. But she did not know something important. The man she believed was too quiet to fight back had already begun dismantling that future piece by piece. And very soon, everyone involved would discover exactly how fragile Daniel Hartman's empire truly was. Sophia looked at me one last time. There is only one question left, Adrian. What is that? Are you ready for what happens when the truth finally comes out? I thought about Rachel's confident smile, about Daniel's laughter on the balcony, about the months of lies. Yes, I said quietly, I am. The announcement of the launch appeared everywhere within days. Financial news outlets began discussing it as if it were the next turning point in the technology world. Hartman Technologies was preparing to unveil a revolutionary artificial intelligence platform that Daniel claimed would transform global logistics and corporate automation. Investors were excited. Analysts called it the most important development the company had made in a decade. The event would take place at the Lakeshore Convention Center in downtown Chicago. Hundreds of investors, journalists, and industry leaders were expected to attend. Cameras from major networks would broadcast the presentation live. Daniel Hartman had chosen the perfect stage, and Rachel would be standing beside him. I first heard about it from Rachel herself one evening when she came home unusually energized. She dropped her bag onto the couch and opened a bottle of wine before even taking off her coat. You should watch the news tomorrow, she said. Why? She smiled with a bright excitement that reminded me of the woman I had married years ago, before ambition and secrecy had changed her. Because the company is about to become the most talked about technology firm in America. That sounds impressive. It is more than impressive. Rachel poured herself a glass and sat across from me. We are launching our new artificial intelligence platform next week. Global media will be there. She paused slightly, waiting for my reaction. And you will be there too? I asked. She smiled again, this time with open pride. I would be introducing Daniel on stage. The sentence hung in the room like a declaration of victory. That is a big responsibility, I said. It is more than that, she replied quietly. It is an opportunity. To do what? To be seen. Her eyes gleamed with something dangerously close to triumph. Once this launch succeeds, Daniel's influence will expand even further. Investors trust him. Governments want partnerships with his company. She leaned forward slightly. And the people closest to him will move up with him. I had her gaze calmly. You mean you? Rachel did not deny it. For a moment we simply looked at each other across the living room. 6 years of marriage had led to this strange, quiet standoff. You should come to the event, she said suddenly. That would be awkward. Why? Because I would be watching my wife introduce the man she's having an affair with. Rachel's expression hardened instantly. You really need to stop saying that. Why? Because it makes things uncomfortable? It makes you sound pathetic. The word landed sharply, but I did not react. Rachel stood and walked toward the window. Next week, everything changes, she said quietly. You should start preparing yourself. For what? For the fact that our lives are going in different directions. She did not look back when she said it. Later that night, long after she had gone to bed, I called Sophia. She answered immediately. So it is confirmed, she said after I repeated Rachel's words. Yes, the launch event. Yes. Sophia was silent for a moment. I expected this, she finally said. Why? Because Daniel always prefers dramatic moments. What do you mean? He loves applause. 2 nights later, I drove again to the lake house. Sophia had transformed the dining table into something that looked less like a living space and more like an investigation headquarters. Laptops, documents, printed emails, a whiteboard covered with names and dates. You have been busy, I said. I told you Daniel has been doing this for years. She turned one of the laptops towards me. Look at this. It was a digital folder filled with recordings, financial records, hotel receipts and company transfers. Every piece of evidence connected to Daniel's secret life. Affairs, corporate money used for private travel, non-disclosure agreements signed by former employees. This is more than enough for a scandal, I said. Yes, but it still needs the right moment. Sophia tapped the screen, showing the promotional poster for the upcoming launch. Daniel's photograph filled the image, his confident smile placed above the words. The future of intelligence systems, global launch event. That moment, Sophia said calmly, is next week. I studied her face carefully. You want to expose him there? Yes, in front of investors and the media. Yes. The plan suddenly felt both brilliant and terrifying. That could destroy the company. Sophia nodded slightly. Daniel destroyed it first. Outside the window, the lake moved slowly beneath the night sky. How would we do it? I asked. Sophia opened another folder. Daniel's presentation will be streamed live to several networks. The event team is using a central media server to control the screens and broadcast. She pointed to a series of diagrams. I used to work in the company's communications department before Dania pushed me out of daily operations. I still know many of the people managing the event. You mean you still have access? Yes. And you can interrupt the presentation. I can do more than interrupt it. She opened the video file. The balcony footage appeared again on the screen, but this time it continued longer. Long enough to show Dania speaking clearly. Do not worry, he told the woman in the video. My wife has no idea. Sophia paused the video. Imagine this playing behind him while he stands on stage promising integrity to investors. The silence between us felt electric. And Rachel? I asked. Sophia leaned back slowly. She will be introducing him. The weight of that realization settled slowly in the room. Rachel believed this event would elevate her into Dania's world. Instead, it might become the moment that destroyed it. Do you want revenge? Sophia asked suddenly. I thought carefully before answering. No. What do you want? The truth. Sophia nodded. That is good. Why? Because revenge is emotional, and truth is unstoppable. Over the next several days, we refined the plan carefully. Sophia arranged access to the media server through a technician she still trusted. I had organized the digital evidence so that it could be displayed quickly and clearly if needed. Emails, financial transfers, video recordings, the balcony footage, everything ready. Meanwhile, Rachel became increasingly distant at home. She spent long hours preparing for the event, practicing speeches and reviewing presentation notes. One evening, I heard her rehearsing quietly in the bedroom. Ladies and gentlemen, she said to her reflection in the mirror, please welcome the visionary behind the next generation of intelligence systems, the man who continues to redefine innovation. Her voice carried admiration. Admiration for Daniel, the man she believed was building her future. When she noticed me standing in the doorway, she rolled her eyes. You should really learn to knock. I was listening. Well, I hope you enjoyed the preview. I did. Rachel turned back to the mirror and adjusted her hair. In a few days, the whole world will see him. I watched the reflection carefully. Yes, I said quietly. They will. 2 nights later, Sophia called again. Her voice was calm, but there was a sharp edge beneath it. It is ready, she said. What is? The final file. All of it? Yes, the evidence, the videos, the financial records, everything Daniel had tried to hide. The event starts at 7, she continued. Rachel will introduce him at 7:15. And then? Sophia's voice became very still. And then the truth begins. I looked out the window at the distant Chicago skyline glowing against the night sky. In a few days, hundreds of people would sit inside a brightly lit auditorium applauding Daniel Hartman. They would believe they were witnessing the rise of one of the most powerful technology leaders in the country. But they had no idea what was about to happen. Because while Daniel prepared for the most important moment of his career, Sophia and I were preparing for the moment when his entire world would collapse in front of everyone, and Rachel would be standing right beside him when it happened. The night of the launch arrived with the kind of energy usually reserved for historic moments. The Lakeshore Convention Center stood glowing beside the dark water of Lake Michigan, its glass facade reflecting the lights of downtown Chicago. Luxury cars lined the entrance, while photographers waited along the red carpet for executives and investors to arrive. Inside the main auditorium, nearly 1,000 seats had been arranged in perfect rows facing a massive stage. A giant digital screen stretched across the back wall, displaying the sleek logo of Hartman Technologies. The future of intelligence systems. Soft music filled the air, while journalists tested their recording equipment and assistants rushed between rows preparing the final details. This was the moment Daniel Hartman had spent months building toward. Backstage, Rachel adjusted the microphone clip near her collar, while a young production assistant gave her a final briefing. You will walk out first, the assistant said nervously. Give the introduction, then Mr. Hartman will join you on stage. Rachel nodded calmly. She looked radiant in a tailored white dress that reflected the bright stage lights. Her confidence was almost magnetic. To anyone watching, she looked like a rising star inside one of the most powerful technology companies in the country. Across the hallway, Daniel stood surrounded by executives and investors who congratulated him in advance. Tonight changes everything, one of them said. Daniel smiled with quiet satisfaction. It already has. In the audience, I sat near the back of the auditorium beside Sophia. She wore a simple black dress and carried herself with the same calm composure she had shown since the night we first met. No one around us recognized her as Daniel's wife. Most people assumed she was just another guest attending the event. You are ready? She asked quietly. Yes. Sophia glanced toward the large screen dominating the stage. The technician confirmed everything is connected to the media server. And the file? It will play the moment you press send. The envelope of silence between us felt heavy with anticipation. A few rows ahead, several journalists discussed Daniel's reputation as a visionary. One of them said, if this platform works the way he claims, Hartman Technologies could double its value overnight. Sophia heard the comment and allowed herself a faint smile. Not tonight, she whispered. The lights in the auditorium dimmed slightly. A voice from the sound system welcomed the audience and thanked them for attending the global launch event. Applause filled the room. Then the announcer's voice continued. Please welcome Senior Communications Director Rachel Cole. The spotlight appeared. Rachel walked onto the stage. She looked completely at ease, her posture confident as she approached the center of the platform. The audience applauded politely. Good evening, she began warmly. Her voice echoed through the large hall. Tonight, we are not just introducing a new technology platform. Tonight, we are introducing a new era. The words flowed smoothly, clearly rehearsed many times. Innovation requires vision, she continued, and few people embody that vision more completely than the man you are about to meet. Behind her, the giant screen displayed elegant graphics showing artificial intelligence networks and futuristic systems. Rachel smiled toward the audience. For years, he has led Hartman Technologies with bold ideas and relentless determination. She paused slightly, letting the moment build. Ladies and gentlemen, she said proudly, please welcome the architect of our future. The room filled with applause. Daniel Hartman walked onto the stage. He wore a dark tailored suit and carried himself with effortless authority, waving briefly to the crowd before shaking Rachel's hand. For a moment they stood together beneath the bright lights, two figures who believed they were stepping into triumph. Daniel approached the podium. Thank you, Rachel, he said warmly. Rachel stepped slightly aside but remained on stage, watching him with admiration. Daniel looked across the audience. Innovation begins with trust, he began confidently. Trust that technology can improve lives, trust that leadership can guide change, and trust that integrity remains the foundation of every great company. Behind him, the digital screen shifted to a new slide, showing the logo of the artificial intelligence platform. In the back row, I took a slow breath. Sophia glanced at me once. Now, she whispered. My fingers moved across the phone in my hand. One final message. Send. At first nothing happened. Daniel continued speaking smoothly. Our platform will redefine how businesses manage global systems. With advanced predictive models and intelligent automation. Then the screen behind him flickered. The logo disappeared. A photograph appeared instead. A hotel entrance in New York. Daniel's voice stopped. The audience murmured in confusion. Another image replaced it. A photograph of Daniel standing close to Rachel outside the private restaurant. Gasps moved through the room. Daniel turned sharply toward the screen. "What is this?" he said quietly. The images continued changing. Hotel receipts, private flight records, luxury suites charged to company accounts. Each document clearly displayed with dates and financial totals. Rachel's face drained of color. Daniel looked toward the technicians near the stage. "Turn that off," he said sharply. But the screen continued. Now video footage appeared. The balcony of the lake house. Daniel's voice echoed through the auditorium. "Do not worry," he said in the recording. "My wife has no idea." The audience erupted into shocked whispers. Camera operators quickly turned their lenses toward the stage. Daniel's confident posture collapsed into visible panic. "This is sabotage," he said loudly. "Someone shut that off immediately." But the next images appeared even faster. Emails between Daniel and Rachel. Messages arranging private trips. Financial transfers linking the company to those trips. The evidence filled the enormous screen. Rachel stared at it in horror. Hundreds of people in the audience now watched in stunned silence as the truth unfolded. Reporters were already typing furiously on their phones. Daniel grabbed the microphone again. "This is a lie," he insisted. "These images have been manipulated." Another video began playing. This time the camera angle showed Daniel kissing Rachel on the balcony. The audience gasped loudly. Rachel covered her mouth. The room had gone completely still. Daniel stepped toward the screen as if he could somehow block it with his body. "Turn it off," he shouted again. Security guards rushed toward the control booth, but the damage was already done. Every phone in the room was recording. Every journalist was capturing the moment. Rachel suddenly stepped toward the microphone. "Stop," she said weakly. Her voice trembled. Daniel turned toward her sharply. "Rachel, do not say anything." But she was already shaking. Tears began forming in her eyes. "I cannot," she whispered. The pressure of hundreds of watching faces seemed to crush the last pieces of her confidence. "I cannot pretend anymore." Daniel's expression turned furious. "Rachel." She looked out at the audience. Her voice cracked. "It is true." The words landed like thunder. "We were seeing each other," she continued through tears. "Daniel promised me his marriage was already over." Daniel grabbed her arm. "Enough." But Rachel pulled away. "I believed him," she cried. "I believed everything he told me." The reporters surged forward. Questions exploded from every direction. Did Hartman Technologies pay for the trips? How many other employees were involved? Is the company board aware of this? Daniel looked completely trapped now. His empire was collapsing in front of hundreds of witnesses. The massive screen behind him continued displaying documents revealing years of secret spending and hidden affairs. Sophia stood slowly beside me. Her face remained calm. "It is finished," she said quietly. Across the auditorium, chaos spread rapidly as journalists rushed to send breaking news alerts. Rachel sank into a chair on the stage, crying openly. Daniel stood frozen beneath the giant screen showing the evidence that had destroyed him. The king of Hartman Technologies had just fallen in front of the entire world, and the collapse had only just begun. The collapse began before the night was even over. By the time Sophia and I stepped outside the convention center, the story had already spread across every major news network in the country. Reporters rushed through the entrance doors behind us while television vans arrived one after another along the street. The cold wind coming off Lake Michigan carried a distant echo of sirens and city traffic, but the louder noise was coming from the phones vibrating in the hands of journalists. Breaking alerts, corporate scandal, affair exposed during global product launch. Daniel Hartman's name was everywhere. Sophia stood beside me on the sidewalk and watched the chaos quietly. Her expression did not carry triumph or anger. It was something calmer than that. Relief. For months she had carried the truth alone. Now the entire world had seen it. "Are you all right?" I asked. She nodded slowly. "Yes." Across the street, a group of reporters was already speaking into cameras, describing the moment when the screen had changed and the evidence began appearing behind Daniel on stage. Sophia exhaled softly. "He always believed his power would protect him," she said. "Not tonight, no." She looked at the lights of the city skyline for a long moment. Tonight, the truth was stronger. We did not speak much during the drive away from downtown. Chicago passed around us in quiet flashes of streetlights and dark buildings. Neither of us needed to explain what had just happened. Daniel Hartman's empire had begun to fall, and Rachel's future inside that empire had disappeared with it. When I returned to the apartment later that night, Rachel was already there. She was sitting on the floor beside the couch, her makeup smeared and her eyes red from crying. The television across the room was showing a replay of the event. The moment when the first photograph appeared behind Daniel on the stage. Rachel looked up slowly when the door closed behind me. For a long time, neither of us spoke. The silence between us felt heavier than any argument we had ever had. Finally, she whispered my name. Adrian. I set my keys down on the table. Hello, Rachel. Her voice trembled. I did not know it would happen like that. You mean the truth? Tears ran down her cheeks again. Everything is ruined. The sentence sounded hollow in the quiet apartment. Daniel's company is under investigation, she continued weakly. The board suspended him tonight. Investors are already withdrawing funding. She looked at the television screen again. My job is gone. I nodded slowly. Yes. Rachel stared at the floor. I thought, she began. Her voice broke before the sentence finished. You thought Daniel's word would save you? She closed her eyes. Yes. The confession sounded almost childlike now. For months she had spoken with confidence and ambition, certain she was walking into a future filled with power and luxury. That future had disappeared in less than 10 minutes. Rachel wiped her face and looked up at me again. I know you hate me. I do not hate you. The answer surprised her. Then what do you feel? I thought about the balcony by the lake, about the long nights of lies and quiet betrayal. Nothing, I said honestly. The words seemed to hurt her more than anger would have. Rachel slowly stood and walked closer. I made a terrible mistake. Yes, I believed everything he told me. I know. She reached for my hand, but I stepped slightly away before she could touch it. Rachel froze. I was selfish, she whispered. I thought I deserved something better than the life we had. You made your choice. I want to fix it. The desperation in her voice filled the room. Adrian, please. I looked at her carefully. For the first time since the affair began, she no longer looked powerful or confident. The arrogance had vanished completely. In its place was fear. But some things cannot be repaired. Rachel, I said quietly, our marriage ended a long time ago. Her shoulders trembled. I was wrong. Yes, I see that now, but understanding after the damage is done rarely changes the outcome. I walked past her toward the bedroom. I will move out tomorrow, I said calmly. Rachel turned sharply. You are leaving? Yes, but this is your home too. It used to be. She stood there helplessly while I packed a small bag. When I walked back toward the door, she was crying again. Adrian, she said weakly, is there really nothing left? I paused for a moment. Once, years ago, I would have done anything to protect the woman standing in front of me. But the woman I had loved no longer existed. Goodbye, Rachel. The door closed behind me a few seconds later. The next morning, the news coverage had grown even larger. Daniel Hartman had been officially removed as chief executive of Hartman Technologies, pending a full investigation into financial misconduct and abuse of corporate funds. Several board members had already resigned. Regulators announced an inquiry into the company's financial records. Daniel's name had transformed overnight from visionary leader to corporate scandal. But strangely, none of that felt important anymore. For the first time in months, I felt something unfamiliar. Freedom. I spent the morning driving north along the lake without a destination. The winter sunlight reflected across the water in quiet waves, while the city slowly disappeared behind me. Eventually, I reached the same road that led to the lake house. The iron gate stood open now. Several black cars were parked outside, while lawyers and investigators moved inside the property. Sophia was standing near the shoreline when I found her. She looked up when she heard my footsteps on the gravel. You came back, she said. Yes. We walked slowly along the water together. For a while, neither of us spoke. The lake stretched endlessly in front of us, calm and silent. Daniel called me this morning, Sophia finally said. What did he say? He blamed everyone except himself. That sounds like him. She gave a small smile. The lawyers will take care of the rest. I nodded. And Rachel? She lost her job this morning. Yes. The wind moved through Sophia's hair as she looked out across the water. I do not feel happy about any of it, she admitted. Neither do I. For months we had been connected by anger and betrayal. Now that those things were finished, the silence between us felt strangely peaceful. What will you do now? She asked. I do not know yet. And Rachel? I said goodbye. Sophia studied my face carefully. You seem calm. I am. The truth was simple. The fight was over, and the future was suddenly wide open. Sophia looked toward the horizon again. For the first time in years, she said softly, I feel like my life belongs to me again. I understood that feeling. Two strangers had walked into Daniel Hartman's world, searching for answers. What they had found instead was each other. After a while, Sophia turned toward me. Would you like some coffee? She asked. The question sounded ordinary, almost simple, but there was something else in her eyes now, Something warmer than the cold alliance that had brought us together. I would like that, I said. We walked back toward the house slowly. The chaos of the past weeks already felt distant, like a storm that had finally passed. Neither of us spoke about revenge or victory. Those things no longer mattered. What mattered was the quiet understanding that had grown between two people who had both been broken by the same lies. Sometimes life does not end with dramatic justice. Sometimes it simply offers another beginning. And as the morning light spread across the lake behind us, it felt as though that beginning had already quietly begun.